Welcome to this edition of Morning Walk with Josh. It's about 24 degrees out here in Atlanta, and I wanted to start these as, a check-in with the world as I contemplate health, contemplate well-being here in Atlanta. And one thing I was thinking about today is the interaction between the environment and our health, and how we are every moment, how the decisions we make about what we put into our body to feed our body. Because to me, our food and the inputs into our body are vital, right? And so, as we walk around in nature, where we evolved over the past millions and millions of years, we see a lot of different plants. A lot of these plants are actually out of harmony with the environment, and there are some big consequences of invasive non-native plants. We actually do have some from the coast, which is pretty cool. They're a little bit prolific here. We've got some more natives, but we've got some blueberries here. And so what's important to notice is that there's an equilibrium, and just like our gut can get out of equilibrium and the environment can get out of equilibrium, and when our life is out of equilibrium, we suffer because of that. And sometimes that's added weight, sometimes that's gut health issues, sometimes that's feeling like your hormones are out of control, and it just manifests in so many different ways. And I'm here with a lot of different birds. Oh, it's so beautiful. We can find that when we're relaxed, when we're calm, our heartbeat calms down, our blood pressure settles, our mind calms, and our body feels more at home. I know when I'm working online, if I'm processing and editing these videos and sharing them with people and creating words, my mind and my body feel out of alignment. There's a lot of pain and struggle being inside in a computer, and when I come out here, there's a lot of joy and happiness, and a lot of concern. There, are leaf blowers going around blowing, the leaves around, and typically they don't need to do that, but just kind of blowing them, and as a result, it's very loud. It's dysregulating to the body, right? Like just hearing a leaf blower go constantly, especially those maybe in Atlanta, you're hearing leaf blowers day after day as all these leaves from these beautiful trees fall. We're the city in the forest, and we've got to blow the leaves away, apparently. And that's, maybe something to be said about our society and how we act here, is that we don't really understand the context and understand that these leaves are going to nourish the ground. They're going to nourish the trees, right? That these fibrous plants have minerals, nutrients in them that are needed. And so, this is just a really beautiful, beautiful forest and space. But if we don't have that ecological awareness, we're going to struggle with our health, right? And so I love to connect foraging with gut health, with weight loss, because it makes sense that our bodies want to hold on to weight, especially as it's cold here. We're freezing. You're going to feel warmer. You're going to survive the winter if you can keep on weight, right? And if you get cold, you freeze to death. It's not something that I've had to experience, luckily, but it was something that our ancestors struggled with. And so to be able to hold on to fat, to be able to store fat, and for women, it may be even easier with more estrogen levels to be able to store and hold on to that fat. And you could imagine, that in order to conceive a child healthfully, in order to kind of help yourself and the child once the child's alive, it would be advantageous to store fat even more efficiently than men, right? And it's very interesting with digestion. My girlfriend and I, we can measure how quickly we go to the bathroom after a meal, how quickly we feel things, and my digestion is quicker than hers, and men's digestion does tend to be quicker than women's as well. And so, especially as we deal with constipation, bloating, gas, IBS-like symptoms, which are way more common in women than men, we realize that this interconnection, though, even though it is harder to lose weight as a woman than a man, most likely, even though there are these hormonal fluctuations that are changing and making life chaotic, our food and the environment that we're in can directly influence and cause the reaction, right? And so there's amazing studies. Dr. Neil Barnard with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, they conducted a study. The average person was 54 years old, and I don't want to misquote the study, but over 50% of them were women. So women in their 50s who were going through menopausal symptoms, because he met a woman who had went into the military. She was serving in Afghanistan, and when she came back, her friends asked, "What did you miss?" And she said, "Well, there was really no cheese and no dairy out there. I would love to have cheese and dairy." And so she ended up eating mac and cheese. Her friends gifted her like 50 days worth of mac and cheese. She was eating cheese on everything. And she wanted to conceive, she wanted to have a child. And so her doctor was checking in with her and basically had to tell her, "I don't think you're going to be able to have a child. You have severe endometriosis. You have these growths in your uterus, and it's going to be nearly impossible to conceive. We're going to have to do surgery." And rather than do surgery, she had surgery set up. But a friend had also mentioned that you might want to try a low-fat vegan diet, or to work with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine that then told her that. And she was like, "Well, I mean, what do I have to lose? What do I have to lose to eat more fruit, more vegetables, more grains, more beans, more nuts?" And so she tried it for, I think it was 4 or 6 weeks. She went in for surgery because she planned to just have surgery anyways. The doctor opened her up, looked inside after the surgery and after the procedure, went to the husband and said, "Hey, I didn't do the surgery." She had no endometriosis. And the husband said, "Wow, that's amazing. I mean, she was on a plant-based diet. She was on a low-fat plant-based diet." And the doctor's like, no, food can't do this. This was a miracle. Wow, look at all these birds here. I don't know if you could see them, but there's like thousands of red-winged blackbirds. That's a miracle. But it just, and that woman ended up working with the Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine. I'm blanking on her name right now. But the point here is that her endometriosis, her symptoms of, hormonal-based symptoms were interrupted and changed and possibly caused by the increase in dairy. And when we remove the dairy, remove the animal products, lower the fat, that's when she was able to see amazing results. So they made a larger study where they took women, brought them into a low-fat plant-based diet, and saw their menopausal symptoms decrease by over 80% within a 12-week period. And this is what we're seeing with the women I'm working with as well. They say, "I don't feel like a zombie anymore. I'm sleeping better through the night. I have more energy." And, we've seen these changes, as Dr. Neil Barnard saw, within weeks to a month. I mean, it's quick. That's the amazing thing, is that if you do a health intervention, you should see results quickly. Can we see all these birds here? They're so fun. Love the red-winged blackbirds. And so, that's the amazing thing about, once the environment starts to heal, native plants. Let's go check out the native plant garden. And, once the environment heals, the wildlife comes back quickly. So Doug Tallamy, he's a native plant enthusiast, and he had basically a grass lawn that was devoid of any life in it. And he started planting native plants. And he started recording. He said, "I know that certain trees that are native," see the birds here, certain trees that are native will have host animals, so, let me just go see if the caterpillars, if the insects will come back. And so he started recording all of the bugs and insects that came in, starting from grass. Within 10 years, he had hundreds and hundreds of species. And the same thing can happen inside your gut, inside your stomach. You can build a microbiome and change your microbiome in a matter of days. So here's a native plant here. It's called Bidens alba. Just got some stuck on me. They call them beggar's ticks because that's how, there we go. That's how they'll spread. And you can see how once you plant natives, once you tend to the native gardens, and especially learning about the edible native plants, you get to help the environment heal, and you can also help yourself heal in the process. So you can't really see much here, but there's a lot of cutleaf coneflower that's going to come right back. It prevents a lot of the weeds from growing, right? So people talk about SIBO, they talk about overgrowth of certain bacteria. And here's the truth, is that the bacteria, the microbes, the viruses, everything that lives inside of your stomach needs food to live. This is actually a Buddhist teaching. Thich Nhat Hanh also mentions even our fear, even our anger, those need to be fed by something every day. And if you don't feed something, it starves and dies, right? And so if we put in food into our bodies that is animal-based, we start to feed bacteria in our microbiome that cause disease, that cause heart disease, that increase risk for cancer, and increase a lot of our problems that we're seeing today with chronic disease. And so, if we think about broccoli, if you eat broccoli, that also helps boost bacteria. Have you ever heard of a bacteria that was harmful from eating broccoli? And now I'm not talking about being fertilized in the poop of an animal and the poop getting on it and you eating that and you got sick from broccoli. I'm talking about actually, eating broccoli, having those enzymes, and someone being like, we lost him. He was chewing and choked on some broccoli. I'll probably be the first one to go out that way, honestly. But bringing up the point here is that once you get outside into nature, you also learn it's not so easy to hunt all of the time. If we didn't have guns, if we had to run down our prey, there are people that claim that that humans are really good at running and that we can run down our prey. And they've taken these people out in the woods and said, go hunt. And they're not very successful, if at all. They're really bad at running prey down. And so, yes, of course we hunted. Of course we were able to hunt. And Native Americans even hunted a lot of animals. And guess what is also talked about in the books for medicinal herbs that a lot of Native Americans used? A lot of treatments for chronic diseases and also for pathogens, for parasites, right? So a lot of plants, when you look into the literature of how Native Americans use them, a lot of them were for parasite cleanses. Where do you get parasites from? Other animals, eating other animals. You don't get a parasite that, if something is parasitizing a sunflower, that is genetically and evolutionarily adapted to be able to eat that sunflower, not to eat a human. But if something is parasitizing a pig, that animal can definitely parasitize a human, right? We can grow an ear on a pig, I think. I don't know. I've seen that article, but I don't know too much about it. But if the jump from pig to human is pretty close and you start eating pigs, you can get viruses, you can get tapeworms all throughout your body, right? So that's not something that happens if you eat black beans, right? So you're exposing yourself to so many more risks by eating those animals, and the amount that we do it. It's not that you eat a single chicken and you're going to have a parasite or die, right? But if we do this every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner sometimes, you're going to have serious long-term consequences, right? So it's not something like there's birds here, but like my likelihood of killing a bird here is pretty low. And then if I were to actually try and get any meat off of that, and I played baseball, I could probably throw a rock and hit a bird, let's just say. But then to get the meat would be a tiny, tiny amount. And so the amount you get at Chick-fil-A, there's no way I would get that even off of a single bird. And maybe we could get a squirrel here and there, but, running down a deer doesn't seem super likely and possible. So all I'm saying here is that what is easy to do is to harvest greens. They don't run away from you. It's to harvest roots and tubers. The sunchokes, you can get 60,000 pounds on an acre, 20 to 60,000 pounds, just depends on the growing conditions. And we have a lot of sunchokes growing in our garden. Nuts, you can harvest thousands and thousands of calories. They don't run away. And if you want protein, which you don't need to obsess over, There's beans, but there's also mushrooms are pretty high in protein and low in fat. That's the ideal thing for heart disease. That's the ideal thing for weight loss, is to have something that's filling, that's chewy, that has that texture, very low in fat, and high in things like ergothioneine that are only really found in mushrooms, nutritional yeast, that kind of thing. And so we have a lot of these healing medicinal compounds. And you can overdo things, of course. You can be allergic to certain plants and mushrooms, so it's not that you can eat any plant or any mushroom. But there are hundreds and hundreds of species, and most of us never get to explore that. So I want you to think about what a lot of doctors have been coming to, and a lot of researchers, is that we need a diversity of foods. And if we just eat the same thing every day for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and it's mostly animal products, then we're going to have a lot of ill health because of that, right? And if we embrace variety, you don't have to go vegan, you don't have to give up animal products completely, though it may be a lot easier. You might get results a lot better, a lot more quickly, and lessen your risk for a lot of diseases. There are ways to see improvements, right? So that's another kind of topic to consider is, should I be 100% plant-based, or should I be like 90% or 80%? Right? And I do believe that you'll see amazing progress if you're not eating many plants and mostly eating animals. If you switch to eating a lot of healthy plant foods, it depends on your microbiome, it depends on your gut and what specifically your struggles may be. Like I had IBS, certain foods were triggers in the past. They're becoming less and less of triggers as I train my gut, as I improve my body and my microbiome. But each person has a different path, right? But if you are to go on that path, and ideally be guided, because it's really hard to do that alone, especially if you have gut health issues like I did, trying to go vegan. I had no idea what I was doing. I ended up eating food that wasn't super healthy for me. I felt worse as a vegan than a vegetarian. And that's because I was eating only processed vegan food with like a few leaves of spinach. And I had no guidance. I didn't know what to do. It took me a very long time. So if you want to speed up that process, if you want to learn how to integrate these healthful plant foods, and whether you want to be 100% or 90%, that depends on where you're at in life, right? Like if you're seriously trying to reverse heart disease, you're going through a cancer diagnosis, you're concerned about diabetes, you're concerned about dementia. I mean, the research shows very clearly that, the closer we can get to 100%, doesn't have to be 100%, but the closer we can get, the better it's going to be, right? And so if you need help, chances are you may even know this information, but you need community, you need support. And so that's what we're building here in Atlanta. We have an online school group where we're actually hosting events, hosting potlucks, hosting movement, foraging. I get to teach about the wild mushrooms and the wild plants here, so you can learn a bit about that. And if you do want one-on-one help so that you can get transformations quickly, woo-hoo-hoo-hoo, love the sun. If you want to get those quick transformations, you want to see change happening in weeks, not months or years, then reach out. We'll send a link below here that you can schedule a call, and we'll see if one-on-one support is right for you. So wishing you a great day. Hope you connect with the community here in Atlanta, and thanks for tuning in. Give it a like, give it a share, send it to a friend who might need it.